big picture, intentionality is what gives you direction. Community is what holds you accountable to that direction. And then congruence is what other people actually experience as you are navigating your leadership journey. So with that, I want to first start us out like we always do. I would like everyone to have a quick grounding moment. So all we want you to do here is to just pause, arrive together, let your body find a seat, take a long, slow breath in, and as you exhale, let go of wherever you just came from, whether it was meetings, your email inbox, or just the pressure of your normal day. I want you to release your shoulders. Feel the pressure of your legs and your feet touching the surfaces that they're on. And just gently release any tension in your body. With that, hi everyone and welcome. I'm super glad to have you all here. And as I mentioned before, we're going to do a bridge session today where we're going to close out the intentionality framework and we're going to jump into congruence. Now, before we do that, I want to just acknowledge the fact that you're here, that you have continued to show up month after month, newsletter after newsletter, and this in and of itself is a community practice. And so you did not have to keep showing up, but you did. And that choice is exactly what intentional community looks like. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Appreciate you all. Now, let's dive right in to the sixth dimension of intentionality, which is community. And community here, we're not just talking about a generic community or support network, but we're talking about an actual growth ecosystem. And so in our previous newsletter, we talked about this dimension, and I want to bring it into the room today because it's really easy to understand conceptually what community is, but it's a lot harder to actually build the communities that are going to support you in your growth and hold you accountable to your goals. And so we often think about community in terms of those that form around us naturally, like our colleagues, our peers that we trust, people in our lives who have been supportive to us. Those relationships matter. They're really, really important, but that is not what intentional community is. And so intentional community for your consciousness practice is something that you actually have to deliberately build and maintain. And it is the relational ecosystem in which your growth is going to be witnessed, challenged, and reinforced on a regular basis. And this is what takes your intentionality from a private aspiration or a goal and moves it into that relational dynamic, which is going to influence the culture and the norms of your team. And so your community is going to either help you stretch and grow, or they're going to prevent you from doing that. And now, if you have worked with a coach before, you've probably already heard that you are largely shaped by the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And not because those people are good or bad, but because their standards, their language, their ceilings, their way of thinking and navigating the world is going to become yours. Their comfort zones are going to influence yours. Their expectations are going to shape yours. Their desires and their beliefs are going to influence yours. And so it's really, really important for you to understand that if you are committed to conscious growth, those 5 people that you interact with the most have to be people who are supporting you on that journey. And so you need to reflect on who are your 5 people. And now, generally speaking, this is inclusive of not just your leadership environment, but your entire life. And for this context, I would love to invite you to think about this in terms of both your leadership and your life, because As we talked about with conscious intentionality, we're talking about your thoughts, we're talking about your emotions, we're talking about your behaviors and your mannerisms. And so all of those things are going to be influenced by everyone around you, not just the people in your organization or in your teams. And so while this is a critical leadership practice, and I will ask you to create a group in your teams that is going to specifically focus on accountability, I also want you to consider who are your 5 people inside of your work and outside of your work. Because again, it matters. It matters to your thoughts, it matters to your emotional state, and it matters to your everyday habitual patterns. And so yes, let me give you some questions. Who are your 5 people? Are they committed to helping you meet your growth goals? Do they call you forward? Do they call you out when you misstep? And who are those people that you are most comfortable with? And I want you to reflect on this again, personally and professionally. And what I want you to do as you're thinking about this is I want you to go ahead and take that next step. And as you are thinking about this, I want you to move it from a reflective practice, and I want you to start actively thinking about how you could design better people to be closer to you that are going to help influence your goals as a leader. And so what I mean by this is people that are going to push you, people that are going to hold you accountable, people that are not going to be afraid to say you messed up and you need to fix it. Right? And so as you're reflecting on your 5 people, I want you to also start thinking about who can you call into your circle that you don't already have? How can you create that circle, and how can you maintain that circle for your community and for your accountability specific to your leadership goals? Now, as you are thinking about that and navigating that, I know it's really, really big. And so if you need to pause the video, pause it, go ahead, take notes. Who are your 5 people, and who do you need to call into that? And then as you're doing that, I want you to think about a structure that is going to help make your community practical and meaningful. And so I always propose, if you've read or participated in any of the previous sessions, then you already know what a community of practice is. But we want you to have a community of practice that is going to give you access to feedback, proactive peer feedback, and that is also going to help you with repair rituals. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. But a community of practice is not just a team meeting or a one-off learning session, but it is an intentional space where you can explore with your peers your challenges as a leader. You can experiment with new behaviors, with new thought patterns, with new processes, and you can also witness how others are navigating that complexity. So the really great part about the community of practices is not just the fact that you get the support that you need and the accountability that you need to meet your goals, but you also get to witness other people. What are they working on? How are they navigating it? What are the thought patterns that they're navigating? What are the behavioral practices that they're implementing? And you get to see them as they're exploring their growth as well, which is going to be influential to you as you're learning and navigating all the things that you need to go through. And one final thing here is, again, this is not meant to be a one-off session. And so what makes community of practices powerful is not the depth of any single conversation, but the consistency of being able to navigate your challenges as a group. And this is really, really important. And so consistency of navigating your challenges as a group. Now, the 2 aspects that I want you to take into consideration for your community of practice here is proactive peer feedback and relational repair rituals. So when we say proactive peer feedback here, we're talking about feedback that is not just remedial. It's not given after something breaks, but it is woven into your community to offer growth for you as you're navigating things before they reach that level of harm. And so we want you to move from vague check-ins with people in your life to actual values-aligned, anchored prompts. And so basically going into your community of practice with the exact intention that you have, the values that you're trying to display, and then asking for specific feedback. And so saying things like, one of my commitments is inclusion. Where have you seen me drift from that? Or where did my impact not match my intention this week? And these kinds of questions are going to position the other people as co-partners in your growth rather than simple judges to your performance. And it's going to help make feedback more of a shared discipline rather than a high stakes exception. And this is really, really important when you're trying to create and change culture, especially if you have a growth mindset and you're trying to implement a learning culture within your organization. And so proactive peer feedback is a really, really big part of that. And the other thing is building and creating relational repair rituals in your communities. And if you've heard me speak before, you know that I always say that mistakes are inevitable in any community or any leadership practice that you have. And if you are doing the real work of leading teams, especially larger teams, you're going to make mistakes. And what is going to distinguish you from your peers is whether or not you can repair the harm that you perpetrate or that you commit in your mistakes. And what's going to distinguish intentional communities is whether or not, as a community, you have the capacity and the structure to honestly and competently assess the mistakes that you made and adjust consciously. And so however that looks like in your world, creating that structure and creating that frame, you want to do things that you're bringing to the group, you're exploring, and you're getting feedback on how you could potentially adjust. You're making those adjustments, then you're checking back in, how did those adjustments land, right? And so you want to make sure that you're consistently circling back, not just to smooth things over, but to actually see, did that other person or did that team get what they needed from you in that moment? And if they didn't, how do you try again? Right? And so again, the communities of practice are really, really important, and they have to have a proactive feedback, and they have to have relational repair issues. And so repair, one final thought on this, repair is how you actually build or rebuild trust. And so if you as a leader can model publicly how to repair that harm, it's going to help you create a culture that allows people to feel safe, one, to mess up, and then two, to actually make corrections themselves when they mess up as well. And so with that, let's move into a really, really quick mini reflection. And what I want you to do here is, you're welcome to do this as a journaling prompt or to just do it right now as a contemplative exercise. But I want you to think about who in your life right now would tell you what you most need to hear. Specifically, not what is the easiest, not what feels affirming, not what, stokes your ego, but what you actually need to hear about how your leadership is landing. Who is that person? And I want you to just sit with this and to reflect on this for a minute or two. And if you already have someone like that in your life, congratulations, you've already started to build a little bit of an intentional community. But if you can't name someone right now, then I want you to see this as an opportunity to explore one of your growth edges. And I want you to invite a real-time support person who can help you to develop and navigate your congruence. And so as we move into congruence, you're going to need those people in your life to help you make sure that you're closing that gap between your intent and your impact. And so before we move into closing out the intentionality framework, I want you to think about already who is going to be that community for you, because it will be essential as we move into congruence. Now, with that, I want to go ahead and close out all of the conscious intentionality. And I want to do that by doing just a really quick recap, and by saying that intentionality, when we talk about conscious intentionality, this is the inner work that is going to set the foundation for your relational practices. And so your thoughts, your emotions, your behaviors, your actions, your processes, your community, all of that is a foundation that is going to support you in closing that gap between your intent and your impact, and in reflexively navigating your leadership goals. And so over the last 6 months, we have covered the 6 dimensions: intentional thought, intentional emotion, intentional behavior, intentional action, intentional processes, and intentional community. And intentional thought, these are the narratives, the inherited beliefs that you have, the habitual interpretations that shape how you read every situation before you even respond, right? And the emotion, the intentional emotion, this is about learning how to read your emotional signals as leadership data so that you can capitalize on that as part of your leadership goals. And this basically is emotional intelligence in action. It's not about suppressing your emotions, not being ruled by them, but using them as an actual skill to create influence in your leadership. And intentional behavior was the micro behaviors, those small, repeated, or habitual choices that you make that either reinforce your values or quietly contradict them. And this is where people actually experience you, right? Because people don't experience your values, they experience your behaviors, and your behaviors teach them what your values are. The next one was intentional action, and these are the higher level stakes or decisions that you make in moments of pressure. And so, what do you actually do when something puts pressure on you? And are those actions in alignment with your values? And intentional processes, these are the actual systems or the structures that you have, many of which we covered are inherited and are never examined. And you want to make sure that you're reflecting on things like, who do these processes serve, and are they reinforcing your values or are they eroding them? And today we closed out that framework with intentional community as the relational ecosystem that holds you and your teams accountable to your goals. And as part of these 6 dimensions, you moved from the internal work of your thoughts and your emotions. You moved through the relational expression of your behaviors and your actions, and then into the systemic architecture of your processes and the human networks of community that are going to sustain everything else as we move forward. And so here's what I want you to understand about intentionality. This is not a linear process, and you don't kind of complete intentional thought and then move into your emotions and then move into your behaviors. All of these things are happening concurrently, and you have to be able to reflect on and navigate all of them individually and concurrently. And so what I mean by this is that your thoughts are going to your emotional awareness is going to basically sharpen your behavioral responses. Your community is what's going to hold your processes and your practices accountable, and your thought patterns are going to shape what you notice under pressure. And all of these things are happening concurrently. So the goal here is to get you to be able to think, to understand, and to explore each one of these dimensions continuously, almost as like second nature for every single situation that you encounter, because your thoughts, your emotions, and your behaviors are all going to differ based on the circumstances that you're in. And you're going to need to consistently question, why am I having this thought about this? Or why am I experiencing this emotion about this specific context? Right? And so you're consistently going to have to practice all of these concurrently. And so again, it's not a cycle, it's not a like linear process. It is all of them happening concurrently. Now, of course, you're going to have things that you need to work on. So if your mindset is not set the way that you want it to about a specific goal or a specific behavior or a specific value, then you're going to focus in on your thoughts and your mindset. Right? And maybe your emotional intelligence, you feel like you're rocking your emotional intelligence. You're able to regulate in the moment. You're able to navigate when uncomfortable emotions arise. You're able to clearly label them and to express your thoughts and your intentions and your values. And so if you can, then you will focus on your processes or the actual systemic practices that come into play. And so while you can focus on a couple areas at a time, all of these dimensions are going to influence you in every interaction and every decision that you make. And so it's really, really important to be mindful of how some of those things are going to influence your thoughts and your behaviors. So with that, let's do a little mini reflection. And what I want you to think about for this one is, which dimension of the Conscious Intentionality Framework surprised you the most? Thoughts, emotions, behaviors, actions, or processes? Which one do you resist the most? And which one do you find yourself needing to consistently come back to? So for every person and every circumstance is different, and for every context and container is different too. And so, I have some, mindset things around money and kindness and things that I believe about money and kindness. And I consistently have to remind myself that those thoughts are not my actual values. They're not my beliefs. And I have to continuously work on that. And so what are those areas that you already know that you have to continuously work on? How do they influence your leadership? And I want you to take as much time as you need to sit with this one. If you need to pause, you're welcome to do that. And I want to just end really quickly with the honest truth about intentionality. And that is that you can move through all 6 of the dimensions. You can examine your thoughts. You can regulate your emotions, bring intention to your behaviors. You can make values aligned or values driven decisions. You can audit all of your systems, and you can build community around you and still have a gap between who you intend to be and who the people around you actually experience. And again, conscious intentionality is what helps you build awareness and capacity, but it cannot actually close the gap that you have. And that is where congruence comes into play here. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to move into congruence, and we're going to talk about how to make your intentions and your values visible so that you can close that gap between your intention and your impact. Now, in one of our previous newsletters, we talked about the trust crisis that many, many leaders are experiencing and navigating, and about how it's not about intention, but misalignment, right? It's misalignment in how you show up every day. And many, many people can have the best of intentions and still not make the best decisions in the moment, whether it's because of your thoughts, whether it's because of your emotions, whether it's because people don't trust you because of your habitual behaviors or actions. Like, whatever it is, you can have a gap in your perceived congruence. And what we mean by congruence, let me step back here. What we mean by congruence is do your values match your actions, right? And so is what you say you value visible in your behaviors and your actions and your decisions? And so, stepping back again, how does that gap form? So if you have an intention and then you say something or you do something that's not in alignment with that, which everyone does, right? But that's where that gap forms. When the moment you say, diversity and inclusion is important, and then in that very next breath, you hire someone who is just like everyone else on your team, who does not bring any thought leadership, who does not bring any behavioral or physical changes to the team. It's not changing how you process or how you navigate anything. Then that incongruence there is what people are going to see and experience, and from that they are going to then label that you said you appreciate diversity and inclusion, or you want to be more inclusive or more diverse, and then yet you've made another decision that did not support that, right? And even if you do all of the inner work, you're still going to have moments where you're going to be misaligned. And there's nothing wrong with that. We talked about this previously, but the most important and influential thing that you can do is, if you make a misstep or if you are misaligned in your values or your actions, is to go back and to repair that harm, to lessen that gap, and to demonstrate, to visibly demonstrate. So Harvard Business Review calls this visible commitment, right? To visibly demonstrate your commitment to your team, whatever that is, whether it's a values thing, whether it's a emotional thing, whether it's a behavioral thing, whatever it is. How do you visibly demonstrate that to your team, right? And another point I want to make here with congruence is that every single leader you talk to has the best self-perception of who they are. They think that they are the best thing to happen to their company or their team, and that they are the only ones who know how to manage and navigate or influence, right? But the reality is that our self-perception is not the same thing as the impact that is experienced by the people that we interact with, right? And again, people do not experience our values. They experience our behaviors, our tone, our timing, our actions, our decisions. And that is what is going to demonstrate to your team whether or not you are aligned in your values. And so as we navigate this, I want to say that gap, that misalignment in whatever it is, your actions or your behaviors, is what congruence is meant to support you with. And the Consciously Congruent Framework is the third framework in our series, and it is meant to build on reflexivity and intentionality. And so for the reflexivity cycle, we asked you, what are you noticing? How are you adjusting? And with the intentionality framework, we asked you, where do you need to bring more intention? Is it to your thoughts? Is it to your emotions? Is it to your behaviors? Where is it? And then congruence is going to ask you here is what you intended actually visible in how you lead? And when it isn't, are you willing to name it and adjust? And that is the congruence framework in a nutshell, right? So the congruence framework is going to weave together the reflexivity and the intentionality frameworks together for a more holistic, applied and relational practice. And it's going to take everything that you've learned from the previous frameworks. It's going to build on it. So your awareness, your direction, and your community. And it's going to ask, is this landing with my team? Can they feel it? Can they see it visibly? And so let's talk really quickly about congruence. And congruence and the framework here that we're going to be talking about is structured around 7 interconnected stages, and they are clarifying your internal compass, identifying your behaviors, creating a pause and reflect practice, facilitating feedback, auditing your alignment, making conscious adjustments, and reinforcing all of the above with your practices. And so I want to just pause here to transition. So this is the 3rd book in the series that we're transitioning into. We're going to be talking about congruence. And if you have the workbook, you're going to be practicing in the congruence workbook over the next few months as we navigate this. But for now, we're going to walk you through really, really quickly what each one of these are. And so in order to have congruence, we have to be able to dive in to some of these areas. We have to know what our values, our beliefs, and our biases are. We have to understand how they influence and drive our leadership. And we have to be able to distinguish honestly between what you aspire and what your behavior actually demonstrates. So that's number 1, clarifying your internal compass. The second area is to identify your observable behaviors. And so we want you to recognize that your specific patterns, your habitual patterns, including the micro behaviors that you demonstrate when you're under stress, are going to either demonstrate or contradict your values. And so what are your what are your observable behaviors, and are they demonstrating your values, or are they contradicting your values? And in order to know if they're demonstrating or contradicting, you have to identify them, right? The third area is to build the capacity to interrupt your autopilot and to use your emotional insight to make more conscious choices in real time. This is the pause and reflect. And then once you have created a pause and reflect practice, we want you to use that to facilitate feedback. So actively inviting, receiving, and integrating external perspectives from the individuals that you lead about how they are experiencing your leadership, and specifically the blind spots that you don't see as a leader. So you want to get that feedback from your team so that you can audit your alignment. And so what do we mean by audit your alignment? We want you to systemically track your patterns across time and context to be able to uncover any recurring misalignments or growth edges that you have. And so again, across time and context, because just like with intentionality, every single dimension is going to be influenced by different contexts. So different people are going to push different buttons for you, and that's going to trigger different thoughts. It's going to trigger different emotional reactions, and it's going to trigger different behaviors from you. And right, who are you in the board meetings versus who are you when you're walking through the hallways talking to people, right? Those contexts are vastly different, and they're going to set the stage for your habitual patterns. And so across time and context. And then once you have audited your alignment in different times and different contexts, we want you to practice consciously adjusting your behaviors. Specifically, we want you to make visible, intentional shifts in your behavior, in your tone, in your processes. And we want you to do that in a way that is going to demonstrate your alignment. And so whatever your intention is, whatever your values is, we want you to make conscious adjustments that are going to demonstrate those to your team. And then finally, we want you to reinforce your congruence through the different practices. And so to sustain your congruence, you have to have consistent rhythms of shared accountability and a disciplined, structured approach to be able to come back to when there's a misalignment. How do you navigate it? How do you create the conscious adjustments that are going to support and realign you to the values that you claim to hold, or to your intentions or your goals or your desired outcomes as a leader. Okay, and so as part of the congruence container, we want you to clarify, we want you to surface things, we want you to pause, to invite that feedback, to track it, to visibly adjust, and then to reinforce. And as part of this, we want you to recognize that this is not a one-time thing. It is a daily practice. You have to be consistent in your frameworks and in your structures to consistently demonstrate congruence. And again, congruence is most often demonstrated in the moments that you might not think matter, right? So your everyday interactions, your everyday behaviors and comments as you're navigating your leadership, those moments matter more than you know. And so make sure that you're not just performing your leadership to your team, but you're actually living it every single day in everything that you do. And here is a conscious reframe that I want you to take into consideration and kind of navigate, right? So, misalignment, when you can appropriately acknowledge and address your misalignment, this is one of the most powerful trust building things that you can do as a leader. So, I want you to reframe your mindset from mistakes or a performance based mindset to thinking about your misalignment as growth opportunities, because those opportunities are the ones that are going to build and reinforce trust, right? Again, every single person is going to make mistakes, and it's how you recover from those mistakes that are going to define your values. And so when you are able to actually name your behaviors, how they drifted from your values, and you can take responsibility for the actual impact that it had, and then you make visible adjustments with your team, then people are actually learning that your integrity is there, and that you're going to hold yourself accountable to the things that you said are important to you. And so your willingness and your ability to adjust is what is going to visibly demonstrate to your team that you mean what you say. And that's what we mean by congruence. So what I want to do next is I want to bring this kind of more into your practice and into your lived experience. And I have a little 3-part practice where you can, sit and reflect or journal if you want. And I want you to hold these questions or reflect on these questions. And I'm going to read each one of them slowly to give you a little bit of space between them. If you need to pause to write more or to think more, feel free to do that. And so for the first question, as you look back across the 6 dimensions of intentionality, which one surfaced the most growth for you over the past 6 months? And which ones are you still actively trying to integrate? And as you think more about your community, excuse me, who is that person, or who are those people who are going to form your intentional community right now? And again, I asked you already to name one person. If you haven't, make sure you name that person that can function as a genuine mirror to you, someone who will tell you what you need to hear and not just what you're comfortable with or what you want to hear. And if for whatever reason you cannot name someone who can hold you accountable, I want you to name exactly what is getting in the way of having a relationship like that can exist. What I mean by this is, if you feel like you're in a senior position and maybe you don't have enough peers that you feel comfortable with. I want you to name that dynamic. I am one of 3 executives on my team. I don't feel comfortable or confident in the other 2. And what that is going to do is once you name that, it tells you exactly what you need to do to take your next steps. Okay? If you don't have it in your current company or team, externally, where do you get it from? Do you join an existing executive peer group? Do you reach out to a colleague in another company or another organization that you trust? Or do you use a trusted friend that understands your leadership dynamic, goals, and desires, and who can support you in the ways that you need? Those are just some examples. But whatever else comes to mind, I want you to name it. If you're having a hard time naming that person, what's keeping you from building that relationship so that you can then build that relationship that you need? And then the third part of this is I want you to identify a value that you hold with conviction. Now, this could be a personal value, it could be an organizational value, or it could just be a growth goal that you have for your leadership and for your team. I want it to be something that is central to who you are and how you lead. And what I want you to do is I want you to trace that value or that goal throughout the past week. I want you to document specifically where you visibly demonstrated that behavior or a behavior that supported that value. I want you to document the specific actions that you took, the processes that you designed, or anything else that's related. And then I want you to think about where things like urgency, habitual patterns, or emotional reactions may have pulled you away from that value or that goal. And I want you to document that gap. Because what you're going to do in the upcoming newsletters and live sessions is work towards closing that gap. How do you better or more visibly demonstrate your values or your goals in practice? All right. So let's go ahead and close out. And in our next newsletter, which will be coming out tomorrow, so May 5th, we're going to move into the first cluster of the Congruence Framework. And we're going to have this kind of become the foundation for you. So clarifying what you actually value, mapping the specific behaviors that demonstrate or contradict those values. And we're going to talk about how congruence becomes your personal congruence work is going to become a practical guide for your conscious culture creation. And over the coming months, we're going to move through each one of these clusters in depth. We're going to move from the foundation into kind of mirroring some of the work and into the actual work of consciously making those adjustments. And again, we're going to keep the rhythms the same. And so we're going to go into some of the details in the newsletters. We'll go even deeper in some of the live sessions to help you to bring it to life. And then we'll give you some reflection practices that you can apply immediately. So with that, I want to close by saying that intentionality is what gives you the direction. Again, community holds you accountable to that, and congruence is what other people actually experience from your leadership. And let's go ahead and close out with final grounding and go from there. And so about 6 months ago, you started this series. You showed up for the reflexivity work, even when it was uncomfortable. You stayed with it through the intentionality framework. And even when there were things like your mindset or your emotional reactions that may have made you a little uneasy, you stuck with it. And so I want you to know that you are doing the work. You are actively demonstrating the work that you need to be a conscious leader and to implement consciousness practices in real time. And so thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for noticing. Thank you for pausing. Thank you for examining. And thank you for consciously choosing to take a different direction. I appreciate it. I'm also certain that your teams appreciate it as well. And I want you to recognize that this work is hard work, right? Reframing our mindset that we've had from our entire lives that we've never once questioned is hard work. Managing our nervous system as we are having emotional reactions to things is hard work. And showing people what we value through our behaviors and our actions is hard work. So make sure you take time to recognize that in yourself and thank yourself for showing other people what you value, what you hold to be near and dear to your heart, and for letting other people experience it, because many, many leaders never take that step. And so again, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for leading with care. And thank you for trusting this space. I want you all to know that I have so much love and gratitude for you all. If you ever have any questions, you are more than welcome to reach out. And one final thing I have not shared, I do not think yet, but in the newsletters, I talked about launching the workbook guides. So these workbook guides are fresh off of the print. So we've got the workbook guides for reflexivity, the workbook guides for pause practices, and the workbook guides for intentionality. So all of the dimensions that we've covered today and recapped today. And then finally, congruence, which is what we are going to be going into next week. And so if you've already got the book and you want the workbook, you can find the workbook specifically on Amazon. The books you can get on any platform that sells books that you like, and the workbooks are only available on Amazon. And so if you want a workbook, you have to get it from Amazon. Or if you want an electronic version of the workbook, you're more than welcome to reach out to me and I will get you a copy. They will also be published on my Shopify account, which will be on my website in the coming weeks. And so you should be able to just grab a copy of the ebook versions of the workbooks really, really soon. And the last thing that I will share with everyone is I just 2 days ago came back from New York City, where we launched the Women Gone Wild leadership edition of this book series. And in this book, there are so many wonderful authors who share their stories and who talk about their experiences with leadership and how to lead with integrity, with consciousness, and doing the inner work that is required for you. Many, many, many topics. I won't go into all of them, but really, really great book. It launches officially, I think, on May 12th. So we're a couple of weeks away. But if you want a copy of this book, you can find it on any of the bookstores, as well as Amazon, Google, and Apple. And with that, thank you all so much. I appreciate you, and I will see you soon.